Could Zack Snyder actually get a chance to finish his Justice League project? We all know James Gunn has moved on with the live-action DCEU, but recently the director and one of the heads of Netflix kind of expressed some interest in pursuing it, and you have to wonder if it's possible in some sort of alternate form. Let's break down what they said and where I think the possibilities lie. Now, before we do that, though, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. We do daily Marvel and DC videos, and we want to be your place for all the superhero news, but we're going to bring it to you truthfully and transparently so you are in the know. Now, what has become known as the Snyderverse actually began back in 2013 with Man of Steel. This was followed up by Zack Snyder helming Batman v Superman and Justice League, where he introduced a ton of new characters which became known as the DCEU. Now, to be fair, Snyder's movies were never really embraced by the majority of critics, and they really didn't perform great at the box office. They did manage to turn a profit in some cases, but they were not what Warner Brothers had expected, and by the time Justice League was in full swing, they decided to move on with a new director, which gave us, quite honestly, a subpar product. Now, this doesn't mean he doesn't have a huge following and fan base, because there are a ton of fans that absolutely embraced his version of these characters and are pretty disappointed that James Gunn and Peter Safran have rebooted it into the new DCU and want to see where Snyder's story would take him. Now, Snyder recently made the end of the DCEU official and actually reached out on social media letting people know it was over. But the Rebel Moon director has now revealed that he would be open to continuing the project, saying in an interview, quote, "If Netflix had the rights to the characters from my DC universe, of course I would do it, absolutely." Now, obviously, that's a huge if. But to be fair, the president of Netflix, Scott Stuber, did admit he'd be pretty keen on taking up these character rights, saying, "Obviously, we'd love to license it at some point. We love to have it so fans can experience more Zack. The more Zack we have, the better we are." Now, to be quite honest with you, I think with the new DCU on the horizon and Gunn announcing big characters like Batman and Superman, the chances of Netflix getting these rights is actually pretty slim. Now, there is a pathway through Elseworlds projects like Matt Reeves' Batverse or The Joker, but you really have to ask some questions on if DC and Warner Brothers Studios would actually license characters that would compete directly with theirs. Additionally, the cost and expense of all of this would be, well, astronomical. Zack Snyder is kind of infamous for running really big budgets with his projects, and his DC projects were absolutely no exception. Add on the fact that he had some really big name actors in these movies, while the cost combined with the cost of the rights might be much more than Netflix could possibly bear and justify from a business perspective. But I do think there is a path forward if this big if were to come true. And that's the big caveat here. I actually think Warner Brothers could work with Netflix on developing these projects as an animated feature. Simply doing part 2 and part 3 of the Justice League and letting that story completely play out in animation would be significantly less expensive. They could opt to try to get some of the same cast to do the voices of these characters, but should that prove cost prohibitive, I actually think many fans would still embrace the project given the opportunity to finally finish the story. Now, this leaves us to the question of whether this will actually happen, and honestly, I don't think it will. Snyder kind of likes to keep his fans, well, engaged, and I feel like sometimes when offered any of these opportunities, if he knows there's going to be a huge response from his fan base, well, he tells people what they want to hear and not necessarily what he thinks will happen. Obviously, we're going to have to keep a close eye on Netflix and Zack Snyder, and maybe this will actually manifest. I do know James Gunn has a great working relationship with the guy, and Warner Brothers is expanding their footprint with some of these streaming platforms, so I honestly think it's possible, just not likely.